Few things are as satisfying as building up an immense army and simply washing over your foes like a river over stones, erasing their existence as effortlessly as a click. Starcraft and Age of Empires largely define the genre and are some of the best games out there, but indie games like Northgard and Driftland have shown plenty of other voices can be heard. The rise of MOBAs has challenged the RTS scene significantly over the past decade, but this hasn't stopped some worthy games from rising to the top ranks to earn their place in the Hall of Fame. Here's our take on the best RTS games. While the Lord of the Rings universe focuses on the lives of individuals, you'd be amiss to ignore the power struggle going on between the various forces in the mortal lands. That's where Battle for Middle-earth comes into play. You can play as a handful of famous armies seen in the books and movies and vie to conquer as much land as you see fit, and you may even meet some famous figures along the way too. As you play, you'll wonder why no one has made a game like this earlier, because the LOTR universe is a perfect fit for it. This is a quality spin-off from the Age of Empires series which draws inspiration from Greek, Egyptian, and Norse mythology as opposed to historical events. Essentially, this takes most things fans love about the mainline series and puts it in a fantasy setting. The vast array of graphical and mechanical improvements made to this classic RTS makes its Battle of the Gods that much more engrossing. Starcraft 2 is a titan of the RTS genre, one so monolithic that many new players fear even picking up the game because they'll probably get torn apart online before figuring out the camera controls. Constant research and development choices will daunt the most indecisive among you, but there's untold freedom of choice whether you're playing as Zerg or Protoss. As a new player, you'll constantly be weighing up whether to invest in permanent upgrades, short-term buffs to your most powerful units, or new units like giant robot dogs. Who doesn't want those? But it's multiplayer where Blizzard's balancing prowess shines, a feat reflected in the game's impressive esports legacy. Winning is a constant, tireless struggle to try and outwit your opponent, scouting out their facilities and attempting to counter it. Simply put, StarCraft 2 does everything an RTS game should do, but with a level of polish that is still hard to match nearly a decade later. Aliens: Dark Descent is the latest game in the iconic Aliens franchise. Set on the planet Lethe, players command a squad of colonial marines in their fight against a xenomorph outbreak, as well as against the cultists who follow them. The gameplay is similar to XCOM, only replacing the turn-based combat with real-time action. Players will have to manage the facilities within their base, their squad's equipment and preparation, as well as their tactics and movement in the field. The tense atmosphere and gameplay make for a great action RTS experience, and no prior knowledge of the Aliens universe is required to jump in. The pressure was on for Blizzard Entertainment, who had already produced great Warcraft games before this, along with the aforementioned Starcraft game, and had high expectations for the third main entry in the series. They knocked it out of the park, incorporating great features from the RPG genre like leveling up and equipping items with abilities, which is seen as pioneering amongst real-time strategy games. For those that want a more futuristic look at the RTS genre, Dune Spice Wars has all the strategy game you could ever want. Create your own venerable house from scratch and rule Arrakis with an iron fist, or let the spice melange take hold and do whatever feels best. There are plenty of choices to make and no wrong way to approach the pretty in-depth game that Dune Spice Wars sets up for you. It may not be the easiest game to hop into just because of the depth of the lore and gameplay, but if you have the time for it, it will reward you. This game asks players to not only focus on combat in real time but unit management and a great overall balance. For real-time strategy players who value large-scale battles, it's tough to go wrong here. Everything here is about balance, so while you can now do things like put a focus on cover, there's emphasis on destroying cover too. Warhammer 40,000: Dawn of War 2 marks another high point for the franchise's video game adaptation efforts and is recognized by many as worthy of being called one of the best RTS games ever created. The definition of insanity? To pack as many units as possible into a single map. Released in 2007, just a year after Company of Heroes, Supreme Commander could not have been more different than prior year's success story. If Co zoomed into the small units' tactics and micro, Supreme Commander zoomed out, literally, and brought massive armies fighting battles across long and short distances. Its spectacle is still nearly unmatched to this day, and it remains a hallmark title for enthusiasts seeking epic scale battles. If some of the settings and tones of these games are starting to feel familiar, Empires of the Undergrowth is as unique an experience as the real-time strategy genre will offer you. You're in command of an ant colony as you try to escape a mad scientist. Along the way, you'll be in charge of fighting other insects and managing resources too. You'll feel like the best general in the far future as you lead your army against anyone and everyone who comes your way. There are sharper games out there as far as graphics go, but none that quite compare gameplay-wise with Dawn of War. More of an honorable mention than anything else, because there's some enjoyment to be had here, and because Creative Assembly, despite all their failures, has managed to turn Rome 2 from a terrible, borderline unplayable mess into one of the best Total War titles around. I just personally prefer to go back to the original, and with the remastered edition, there's no reason not to, as you'll see further down the list. However, Rome 2 isn't without its merits nowadays. After 10 years of updates and refinement, the campaign is way more developed than the original title, with better building chains and a deeper political system. What sets it back is how faster battles play out and how the first Rome had a much more robust battle system that took into account unit collision, mass, and experience and simulated all these independently, instead of being based almost exclusively on hard class counters. This innovative Viking game arrived on our strategy shores in mid-2018 after a stint in early access. It occupies its quiet corner of the genre in a very stoic and extremely competent manner. Set in a fictional world, each match of Northgard has you take command of newcomers to an island that you need to explore and expand into to build a new life for your people. You don't build buildings and recruit units. Instead, you must assign your limited population to various jobs enabled via buildings. The game can be quite hands-off in many respects, even combat following a guidance model versus direct control. You won't be alone on the island either, as others will also seek new homes for themselves. Each clan of Vikings has unique mechanics and distinct playstyles. Some prefer to form alliances, while others like to conquer. Others want to make money, maybe summon a kraken. There are multiple routes to victory, and every procedurally generated island has mysterious NPC monsters. There's also a survival element. You must have enough food and supplies to see yourself through the winter phases. The game has some paid add-ins in the form of new clans, but most of the major updates, including several new game modes, have been free. What set Sins of a Solar Empire apart was its seamless integration of 4X, explore, expand, exploit, exterminate elements into real-time strategy, evolving a genre hybrid that, to this day, still manages to have an active player base of space enthusiasts. Its epic scale, sprawling star systems, and the dynamic interplay of diplomacy and warfare set it apart as one of the best RTS games of its era. The excellent graphics paired up with an active modding scene are the cherries on top of a beautifully crafted cake. Want to play on the Mass Effect universe? Modders got you covered. Halo? Yup. Star Wars? Please. There's a Sins of a Solar Empire 2 on the Epic Store in active development, and it will come to Steam once the game is complete. Set during the Middle Ages, Crusader Kings III is a grand strategy game, which means that it's asymmetrical and focuses on large-scale military movement. It becomes quite the addictive habit to fight for your chosen dynasty's bloodline in political and combative warfare. This game is generally a little niche, but this is still a great, accessible entry point for RTS newcomers. The Total War series has taken players to important points in history from all around the world. While everyone has their favorites, and there's no wrong answer as to which one to play, few of their games were as well received as Rome. Total War, The Plight of the Roman Armies is a classic one that fans of history and strategy games can't get enough of. Rome does a good job of taking into account the subterfuge and policy of the Roman governments as well as the combat. It may be a lot to balance, but the game eases you into it rather well. A new take on the classic series mechanics and a prequel to the original Homeworld, Deserts of Kharak is beautiful, haunting, powerful, and intense. While we were initially skeptical of how the 6 Degrees of Freedom RTS would pan out on a flat plane, Blackbird Interactive has packed Deserts of Kharak with nuance and heart. One of the best RTS solo campaigns in history, coupled with gameplay that hides surprising subtlety, Homeworld, Deserts of Kharak has been sadly overlooked by the larger RTS community. These days, it's available as part of a bundle with Homeworld Remastered, which also may be worth checking out if you like the original classic games. If you're talking about sci-fi RTS games, then you're sure to bring up Starcraft at some point. The developers have done a lot to make a science fiction universe that is well thought out and makes you just want to learn more. Plus, there are few enemies as impressively destructive as the Zerg. No matter what side you like to play on, you'll be in for a treat. It's a game series that's been around for some time, and they've used that time to figure out how to revolutionize the RTS genre. This 2019 remaster of the Second Age of Empires game celebrated its 20th anniversary. This game is generally considered the best in the series, but it's debatable. This game focuses on building towns and armies to defend them. The game was a big milestone not just in its series, but in the entire RTS genre, with a huge bump in visual fidelity, the inclusion of every expansion from previous versions of this game, and the same addictive gameplay fans have come to revere. Age of Empires II Definitive Edition deserves all of its flowers as one of the best RTS games of all time. It's perhaps slightly unorthodox to have two games from the same series grace a list like this, especially considering Age of Empires IV is, in many ways, a reimagining of Age of Empires II. However, the newest entry in the legendary RTS series has exploded onto Steam and deserves a shout-out in its own right. Age of Empires II remains a quality RTS game because it's managed to stand the test of time and is still getting support today, but its newest sibling is by no means a slouch. Sporting an upgraded engine, new graphics, and a different approach to civilization design, Age of Empires IV is a modern AoE game for the modern strategy gamer. It's even turned up its treatment of history to 11, with hours of real-life documentary footage explaining the historical context of the campaigns, as well as specific aspects of medieval life. The campaigns are also pretty fun, although it's unclear what the RTS community makes of the multiplayer and faction balance. Make sure you check out our Age of Empires for review, and we've also got plenty of Age of Empires for Civilization guides to check out. Steel Division 2 pushes itself to the absolute limit. It's a WW2 strategy game that stands out from the crowd with ease thanks to the massive roster of units and grand scale of battles in which you can control. Historical accuracy and balance are the keys that make this game work. The developers have poured over every unit in every army and made sure they're not only realistic, but fun and easy to manage. It can get overwhelming at times as you mix air, armor, and infantry unit tactics, but it's well worth the time to learn how to do so. Set during a harsh volcanic winter, Frostpunk sees players build and maintain a city and make some incredibly tough decisions based on survival. It straight up feels like more than a video game with some of the decisions and their consequences. This game's alternate history take on the 19th century and its mix of city building and RTS elements make it one of the more unique picks on this list of the best RTS games ever introduced to the subgenre. It's nice to see a new face finally make it onto this list. Driftland was in early access for a couple of years before it was released in April 2019. This innovative RTS follows in the mold of the classic Majesty franchise, where indirect control is the order of the day. You are a mage whose realm is on one of many shattered pieces of the world floating around, and you must develop your holdings and expand onto other ones by connecting them together. It's not for everyone, and there are some other minor niggles that will need to get worked out over time, but Driftland's willingness to be bold and experiment does it justice, and anyone looking for a new fantasy RTS game doesn't need to look any further. If you want a real-time strategy game in its purest and most complex form, then look no further than Stellaris. It's a game that asks a lot of you, and rewards you for the more you pay attention. You get to create a civilization from scratch on the galactic scale. This seems like it would be hard to pull off, but Stellaris somehow runs it all with little to no hiccups. You can spend months exploring all the game has to offer for you. It's not for the easily frustrated or those who don't like poring over details. So, did you like the games I recommended? So leave your like, subscribe to the channel to follow me and activate the bell because I post a lot of videos on this channel and you can't miss it. I would like to remind you that in the description we have a list of different products that can make your gaming experience much better. If you want to buy, the link will be in the description. Anyway, thank you very much for following me this far and until next time, bye.